thanks so much for having me in your beautiful office.
Welcome to my humble abode here in Parliament.
The government offices. What was it? Where are? Oh yeah, the division.
That's the Senate. They do crazy things. If we were to stop, based on whatever those people were doing, we would be in a dark place.
Well, I guess that's never going to stop, is it?
It's actually part of, like, this is what life's like. You in the middle of your workday, all of a sudden you're interrupted by these really irritating bells.
So I'm here. I've come to Canberra after making a few videos about the housing crisis, something that I'm experiencing firsthand myself.
Yeah.
But I also had a lot of people have reached out to me since talking about their experience of homelessness or just their struggles basically trying to afford a home or even rent at this point. And I just want to try and find a solution. I know that Labor, the government has put forward, your bill. Is that the correct term?
It is a bill. Yeah.
And obviously there's issues getting that through the Senate. Why, I guess, do you feel like this is the solution to the problem? And if it doesn't make it through, are we waiting to the next election to fix this problem?
Great question. I think that the first thing to say is that, like, this is such a big issue, and the fact that you're here and that you're trying to raise your voice because you're here because you're here at the pointy end and you're experiencing the pointy end of a really big and difficult problem. It's something that's kept me up at night a lot. I've written about this extensively as well, and it's something that it's going to take a long time to fix. But let's go through some of the parts. The first thing is that the federal government has dipped in and out of the housing sector in a whole range of ways, including whether or not they build social housing. And Scott Morrison, Tony Abbott, and Malcolm Turnbull all didn't want the federal government to build social and affordable homes. And we want to change that. We have to, right? We have to. If the federal government's not part of this, then we've got no chance to fix the housing sector. So we have to be in the game, and we have to be doing what we can. And I think the biggest reason why is, like I think every member cares, but like we actually, look, you're not in this place if you don't actually give a shit about these things. And yeah, it's a really big issue. So we have to be doing something. We have to be in this effort to try and tackle the housing crisis. What the housing bill does is it creates a minimum amount of money that the federal government would spend every year on the construction of affordable and social housing. Is it going to be everything to everyone? Of course not, right? Is it the only thing the federal government's doing? No. But it's really important about getting the federal government back into the construction of social housing, and that's something that's really important. And if we're not doing that, we don't even have a chance of fixing this.
So with the wording around social and affordable housing versus public housing, a lot of people, I guess, that I'm talking to and speaking to aren't necessarily fully across what all this means.
Great.
But like something that I put in my last video was that in the 40s, we had 25% of all new builds were public houses and owned by the government. Of course, there's state and federal, chatter around that, and that creates issues. I will say that Labor is in power in every mainland state, so you'd think that the National Cabinet could maybe find a consensus more easily than in any other time in history. Why, like, affordable housing? Why put the money in private hands to operate and to build rather than keeping it within the public coffers and making a return on that investment?
It's a really fair question. The simple answer is you get more homes. So if you have also private capital investing in the construction of homes, then you can build more, and we need to be building more. It's the same reason why, does government have to build every new bit of renewable energy, or can the government stimulate the parts of the energy sector that actually enables more and more wind farms and solar panels to be built? That's the answer. But the truth is we have to be doing both, because there's people on some parts of the housing, like there's people who need social housing or public housing. There's people who need affordable homes, so they're ready to either, that they might be working as a nurse, teacher, like in so many different industries, and they just can't afford to get into either a stable rental property or to buy their own home.
Yep.
So there's different bits for different people, and the truth is we want to see people, if you're working hard and you've got a full-time job and you're putting in all this effort and you want to buy a home, at the moment for too many people it's not even possible.
Yeah.
And so I think the answer to your question is we want it to be at least possible. And for too many people in Australia, it's becoming harder and harder.
On that idea that the private sector can do it more, build more, I think of that in the vector of, like, I kind of see housing in the same way I see health or education, but health particularly. And I think we have this really great example of like how the private market fails in America around health, where they have no public health system and only private. And so you can see this example where you break a leg and then you go bankrupt in America.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky in Australia that we don't have that. But we really kind of have a similar system right now where we have 2% of our housing makeup is owned by the government. That's not very much market competition to the private sector. And that's why, in my estimation, that seems why house prices and development prices are so high, because we don't have that. We don't have, the government can do things at cost or at a loss because it can be operated as a service rather than a for-profit enterprise.
I completely agree, and that's why the next big piece in all of our housing policy is trying to get the government to build social housing, which is homes for people on the public housing register, but it's run by community housing providers, and some of them are they're really good organisations. They often have specialised wraparound services. That they might be specialists in domestic violence, for example, and women's shelters. There are a number of community housing providers that specialise in providing housing for young people. Now, it's not one size fits all. So some community housing providers, they're really good at what they do. So we want to build more and more of them. And
isn't it a failure of government if we're relying on not-for-profits and charities and community organisations to fix the problems of our social network rather than the government though? Shouldn't that be the core basis of government, is to look after the people who are most at need?
Yeah. But government can build these homes and fund the construction of these homes. There are also specialist services who perform amazing work, and they've become specialist organisations. And government, I'm in the Labor Party. I believe in government being an instrument for good in society. That's why we get involved in here. That's why we, put our life on hold to try and become members of parliament and go through all the things we have to do in order to try and contribute in that way and get government doing good things. That's why we're in this caper.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that there aren't amazing organisations that have become specialists, because that's what they do. Yeah. And I don't agree entirely on the premise that just because you're a non-for-profit organisation means that you have no justification for being these organisations have been created by people who see a need and who have their own lived experience, who don't want to be attached to government necessarily. They want their own organisation. They can run it in their own way.
But can't government be preventative rather than waiting?
Absolutely. Which is why we need to build more homes, and it comes back to this thing. I really think people elect us to try and get things done. They don't expect us to be perfect. In fact, no member of the public has ever come up to me and said, "You're perfect." And I will never expect them to, right? Of course not. But I do think that there is this, at the end of the day, are we coming together and trying to get things done and trying to make progress and trying to use government to get things done? And I really think that, there's been a little bit of politics. I want the Greens to come and get this done with us and to be a part of the solution. Of course I do. I don't like it. It's crazy that we've got people like Peter Dutton and Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer's character having, being able to block the construction of social housing. It's 4,000 domestic violence shelter places. I've got places in my own electorate where, there are specialist housing for women who have fled their own home, and they need to be renovated. They need to be upgraded to a place that's frankly a bit more fit for human consumption. There's some parts of it that are okay, but there are others that need to be. Like, that's exactly what this is designed to do. And no one who's blocking this thing is currently on one of those waiting lists. No senator who's currently blocking the construction of these homes is doing it in any other place other than in the safety of their own home. So I don't know. Of course, it's not everything. There's other stuff that we're doing. There's other stuff we need to do. There's like, what's next after we get this done? Can we look at ways to scale up as well? All of those are legitimate questions. But I also think this is a good, solid foundation that gets the federal government back on the table of building homes, of trying to work with other levels of government to build homes for those who need it, and to try and do more to help those who actually can afford a safe and secure home. And that's got to be our agenda.
Yeah. Right, so I just want to make sure that we're still recording, because yes.
We're still recording.
Yes, we're still recording.
And now for a message from our sponsors.
Yeah. I guess on the idea of like getting this bill through the Senate, and the makeup of the Senate, which was, chosen by the Australian people.
It's a beautiful thing, democracy.
And so if Labor don't have a mandate really in the sense that you can't just get this bill through if the general public had voted unanimously everywhere that you could just get through everything without having to go anywhere else for a vote, then that's what the people would have given you, and you haven't been given that by the people. So isn't it a little bit like rich to expect that then not to make any concessions in your policies in the Senate when there's people representing those people, whether that's on the right or the left of the politics, they're representing real people in Australia? Isn't it a bit arrogant from the government just to be like, well, they should accept it, otherwise domestic violence survivors are just going to be on the street? That seems like a very emotive way to not get to a solution when people are crying out for more. I'm a renter, and I mean, I'm not a renter actually. I've just moved home because I couldn't afford rent, and I've had a successful career as a business person, and even still I'm in that situation. And there's nothing really in the policy for me, in the bill for me as a would-be renter, beyond rental assistance.
So rental assistance isn't in the bill. What the bill is that it's a construction of 20,000 affordable homes. So 20,000 rental properties to go in for people who are working on, who are in the front line. So whether it's teachers, nurses, to try and create more more housing stock in the rental market to try and bring down some of the prices as well. So it is all about building rental properties. That's what this is, 30,000 rental properties. It's also about 10,000 of that 30,000 to go towards domestic violence shelters and also veterans. Like, of course we don't have a mandate, right? Of course we don't in the Senate. The Senate gets elected for 6 years at a time. So 3 years, governments get elected for 3 years. It's a complicated system. We have a mandate in the House. We've put our bill through the House. It's passed through the House. And it's up to the Senate to decide what they want to do. But like, for goodness sake, we're not asking the Senate to, go to war. We're asking them to build social housing homes.
But all they're asking is for more assistance for renters.
They're not. They're asking for. First of all, there was a whole range of concessions that have been made and negotiations that have gone on for a long time. Let's go through some of them. First of all was around a guaranteed amount of funding, because there was a ridiculous claim that this is like a gamble on the stock market, which is not true. Government has a lot of these funds. So we've guaranteed that a minimum 500 million goes in to social housing every year. Guaranteed, right? Make that clearer. There's also a request from the Senate, from people like David Pocock, to index it, so to make sure that money keeps increasing every year. We've guaranteed that. There was also a whole range of money, a whole extra amount of money that went into Indigenous housing, First Nations housing. So we've put that again on the table. There's been a long debate. We can't debate with Peter Dutton because he said he doesn't want to be involved in any of it. Yeah. So like the only people who've got to get this thing through is through Jackie Lambie, who's agreed to the bill, David Pocock, who has said he's not going to oppose the bill, and I'm pretty sure he's, I don't want to put words in David's mouth, but like he's not blocking it. It's the Greens who like we desperately want to do this, to get this done with them, and yeah, I don't think people want to see us squabbling over this. No. I think it's so silly. So why not get this done? Get the federal government back into building homes, and
But why can't you just own those homes? Why can't you just keep hold of that? We've sold off so many of our assets over the last 20 years, and that has led to this problem. So
we would own them. The community housing providers would help run them, and they'd help build them. But we'd still have a stake in a lot of them. So it's and they would be going to people on the public housing wait list.
Yeah.
So people who are waiting for a home, that's what these are for.
Yeah.
I know you care about this, right? That's why you're in this building.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be so arrogant to say that there aren't people on the other side of this debate who don't care about it as well. I really care about this housing, not only this bill, but housing as a sort of problem that we have to solve together. But I don't think blocking this bill is going to get us closer to that answer. I honestly don't, and I really hope that, and I still think we might get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope we do. I want people to have more access to housing, but it feels like we're in a crisis, and it feels like radical solutions fix a crisis, not measured solutions, because you can't surf a tidal wave without being a radical surfer. You know what I mean? That's the dumbest thing I've ever said.
No.
You have to really have really massive ideas to fix a really massive problem, and 100%. This doesn't feel like it. Spend $10 billion on housing.
We are.
Now. No, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Look, I hear you, and I would just say that, for 10 years, we had a federal government who refused to do anything.
Yeah.
We've got to change that. We've got to step forward. We've got to do something. And once that's in place, once we've got the infrastructure to actually get this thing moving, to build homes now, stop squabbling, but to make a start, then we look at, well, what's next? And how do we build from there? But right now, it's in this silly place where it's being blocked. And I look at, you've got Labor and the Teals on one side, and you've got Peter Dutton and Pauline Hanson, for crying out loud, and the Greens. It makes no sense, and
they're not arguing for the same thing though.
They're voting for the same thing.
No, I think that's a corruption of how the political system works. They're not voting for what you want. They're not voting for something different.
Yeah, but what we want is the construction of social housing, and if they're voting against it, they're voting against the construction of social housing, and I know that their reasons are very different, right? Of course they're very different, but the outcome's the same. And we need them. We need them to be a part of the solution.
But are you Albo said that he's willing to go to the next election if this doesn't get up. Is that seriously what Labor is going to do? Say to everyone, it's all the Greens and Pauline's and Peter Dutton's fault that this doesn't happen when you're the government, you're in charge, and you could put forward something that could get through the Senate, and then it could be better. Are you seriously going to take it to the election? That seems like a long time away for people who are in desperate kind of...
Totally, right? We need to get building yesterday.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing we're doing. There's a whole financial instrument that helps invest in social housing already. But that's not government investing directly. It's through bonds and other financial instruments that we make money available. It's a bit complicated. It's not a bad solution, but it's not government directly investing in it. The other things that we're doing is trying to make... reduce tax burdens for companies that are building rental properties. We want more rental properties, especially for those people who are working, who want to buy their own rental property and get more stock into the market. We also there is a lot of other stuff that's going on. This is one small part of it, and I think that we man, we need to just build. We need to build. You know, it's
definitely. Like, I think that's something that we I fully agree, and I feel like in this journey that I've been on, building public housing, public infrastructure is really important, because without a teller in the private market, the private market just does whatever the hell it wants to, and I feel like the private market has let us down, especially as young people, because our cost of living is massive. The amounts we have to climb to get into housing is massive, and it's really hard to see after, you know, you're talking about this 10 years of a government that I don't really think cared at all about young people.
No.
They created this mess on top of, you know, other political decisions in the past. Like, there's a whole generation screaming for more, and like, we've been really screwed over. Unless you get a job in the halls of Parliament House, you're not likely to buy a house, or you have a parent that's going to put their hand in their pocket. So I just feel like I've had so many people messaging me about their experiences, and it's really hard. And the blocks, the wall in front of us is so great that it just doesn't feel like we're being heard. And something that I felt quite disheartened about today when I was in question time was the way that question time acts, the way that it looks like a schoolyard. And I was sitting next to some teenage kids, and I was like, this is what the Prime Minister is modelling to this teenage boy about how to behave. This is what a man in the highest office is treating someone who's a renter. And the way that he spoke to Max and was really, like, I felt really bad for Max, and that's a really weird thing to do, because I felt like I wanted to get down there and stop a bully, and that was really hard to see. And how do you feel about that, like, as someone in here, like, the way you treat each other?
Of course we have to treat each other respectfully, right?
That was the whole point of that last election, right?
Question, 100%. And I would also say that question time is a bit of theatre, and I know it feels a bit. It doesn't feel right, and I understand that. I don't want to get sidetracked with question time, because I have whole views on question time. I actually think as a thing, it's really important that oppositions and anyone can go in there and ask the Prime Minister whatever they want. And as an institution of democracy, it's actually really important. But let's park question time. Yeah. The most part, like, the Greens, the Prime Minister has been sitting down with the Greens and working through these constructively, and we'll continue to do that, just as we've done it with on every piece of legislation. And I actually think that's what Australians have voted for. They didn't want the sort of gaslighting of Morrison, and it was just terrible. So I know the Prime Minister personally. He's not a pushover. He is a serious person, but he's a fundamentally good person. And I know that he cares deeply about this. Like, housing for him was this thing that changed his life. He grew up in public housing. He's probably part of what makes him tough and strong. But at the same time, I also know that he cares deeply about this, and he wants to use government to try and make change. And it's in
his response, though, he didn't talk about the policy. He talked about things that Max have done.
And
he had a piece of paper that was just ready to character assassinate, rather than talking about a problem that young people are feeling really emotional about. And then we're, vectorized through this young person in Parliament who's much younger than most people in the room, and we see the leader of the country speaking to a young person like that. It's pretty demoralizing.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I really think that, we're not in this place to bicker. Like, we're not in this place. No one comes to this place to argue, and we come to get things done. And, there are big stakes involved. Max is no fool. He's a smart guy, and he holds a powerful position. He is the architect of a policy that will either determine whether or not we build 30,000 social homes or whether we don't. Like, it's his choice. He is a powerful character. He likes to diminish himself a little bit and stay humble, but he is not. He's a powerful...
But the government, you could make 60,000 homes.
Sure.
You're the ones in charge that
you could go, we can't get 30,000 through the House at the moment, through the Senate, right?
Or you could offer more, and then you'd have the votes. You don't care. You don't need Pauline, and you don't need Peter Dutton.
I think that. Look, I'm not at the table. I don't have the.
Yeah,
I don't have the.
I know. It's just
I don't know as much as I would like to write the checkbook.
Like, you know, like it's just
sure,
like it's this or nothing. When it could be more or nothing.
And we all have choices, right? Yeah. Like our choice is, do we try and find a pathway through? And we are choosing that. Yeah. And the Greens have a choice. Do they choose to come with us and try and find a pathway through? And I genuinely hope they do. Like I you know, like there are people who actually need a home, who this whole debate, as you say, will just feel so frustrating because they just want to see government do things. So, you know, that's all.
The situation that I'm in, just like, and we'll end in a sec, but sure. I'm in an incredibly privileged position that I am able to move back to my parents' house at the ripe old age of 30. I'm able to go there, and I feel
I had to do that as well. It drove me a little bit crazy.
Yeah. But if not, I would be homeless right now, and that's how close we are. And someone posted a comment saying, we all have the sense that we're closer to being a billionaire than homeless. We're so much closer to being homeless.
Yeah.
And I think that's just more and more people are coming to terms with the fact that they're actually very close to being homeless. And in the lucky country, it seems so crazy. And I just don't know if 30,000 homes is the difference.
It's not. We need to do more. But we need to also get back in the game. And you know, I would
Sorry, yeah.
I would say, yeah, like I want to be a part of doing things. And I hear people, and I see people. I speak to people in my home community. I've got more than half my electorate are renters. I have thousands of social housing homes. People who live in public and social housing. You know, I have a lot of domestic violence shelters. I feel responsible for a lot of people who whether or not they've got a home is the difference between, as you say, them being homeless or them being able to participate fully in our society. And I care about my people. I care about those people. And I didn't come here to bicker. I didn't come here to fight with the Greens. I came here to try and do things.
Yep. And
that's what we have to keep doing.
Cool. Well, you heard it here first. The solution is more houses, right? More public houses.
More houses. Build them. Build it and they will come.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Pleasure, mate.
Great sport.